Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thank you for bearing with us through the technical difficulties. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the land we identify as RTO9 is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat peoples. RTO9 will honor and respect the land, the people, and the treaties. We are extremely thankful for the original tour guides of these lands and all that they have shared. All those that reside, work, and play on these lands are treaty people, and we must honor the treaties in a mutually beneficial and equitable manner. With 1 in 5 Indigenous people in Canada living in Ontario, we believe working together in a mutually beneficial manner will help all Ontarians prosper through the joint development of the tourism industry. As an ally to Indigenous people and a partner of Indigenous Tourism Ontario, RTO9 will commit to improving the socioeconomic conditions of Indigenous people through tourism by creating space for Indigenous people to tell their stories on their terms. Now, I just wanted to touch on a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. First, if you didn't hear it or you came in after, this workshop's being recorded and will be available after today's session on the RTO9 website, which is rto9.ca. There will be a question period at the end, and Karine really likes it when you guys are engaged in the chat box. So feel free to pop in there and contribute throughout the presentation. If you want to contribute something anonymously, you can do so in the Q&A box at the end, at the bottom as well. After today's session, you're going to get a quick 2-minute survey link. If you're able to spare some time to review the workshop, that would be really greatly appreciated. Now, without further ado this morning, I'm going to pass it off to our lovely facilitator, Karine from Mellow Brew Marketing.
Thank you for having me. We busted through technical difficulties, and now we'll bust through social media strategy difficulties, which
Perseverance.
we're yes, we power through. So welcome everyone. Yes, I do enjoy the chat, and I need you to be engaged in the chat so I don't feel alone. There's nothing that is more difficult than someone who's trying to teach a thing, and you just don't really know if there's anyone around listening. So I really appreciate if you can jump in on the chat. Now I'm just going to, I don't know, Zoom is prompting me all these different things right now. So I'm just going to allow it, whatever it's asking. No need to worry. Can everyone see the slide deck that I have here, the social media strategy first slide? Now I'm looking for the chat.
I was gonna say we can see it, but it's small on the screen. We can see both of your windows, so we see the social media strategy, and then we can also see the notes
Yeah, we
present.
don't want that. There you go.
There
Is that
you go, perfect.
You now know my tricks with my notes on the side. It's all gone. We're all just out here doing what we can. Okay, so I'm going to just make sure that I can open the chat box. Sorry. Show chat previews. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Yes, the chat. I'm so sorry. I wish I didn't need it, but I need it. I need it to survive this conversation because it's just so much easier when I know what you're thinking and I know how you're feeling about everything. So today we are having a discussion about social media strategy and how you can plan to just be successful with your efforts. So thank you for some of you already welcoming in the chat. We've been doing a lot of workshops together so far. And so this is kind of a combination of all these things. And I wish there was just like a simple answer, especially in a group like this, where everyone is coming in, everyone is from a somewhat different industry. You all have different backgrounds, and you're all trying to get the right strategy, but how do you present to a group and give, very clear direction without really knowing what is happening? So today I'm going to outline to you what it looks like, the process and the steps that you would take to really identify a good strategy. And I have some exercises at the end that you'll be able to walk away with, and you can use these slide decks. You can take screenshots of them. This will be available in a replay. So if you really want to get into it, you can go and dissect these pieces for yourself. And I think it's important to do that work. And it's like I say all the time, it's not sexy work. It's not fun work. It's a lot of reflecting and a lot of thinking and a lot of research. But that is how you craft a great social strategy. So before we jump in, I would love to know, how do you feel about your social media strategy? And that's where we're going to use the chat right now. Tell me how you feel about the existing strategy that you have. And if we're being honest, do you even have one? So if you can enlighten me here a little bit, I'm seeing already needs a little elevation. All right, we're being honest. That's good. I don't have a plan. It's lacking. There's no strategy. I want to start. So that's positive. It's good. Constantly learning. We have to be constantly learning in this space. It's always evolving. The reality is, though, that the tools are evolving, but the strategies can fundamentally remain the same. If you're true to your brand and who you are, there are a lot of pieces that can follow through no matter where the tools are going. So I'm hopeful that this will enlighten you today. Overwhelming in many ways. It's almost like a job, and it is a job in itself. Absolutely. It is a huge endeavor. And so my goal is always just to try to find ways that if you walk away from this and there are a couple of tidbits that just help you gain clarity and feel more confident in taking action, that would be my goal for you. A lot of random and reactive work. Yes, that happens, especially if you don't have a dedicated team or person to the social strategy. It's just either somebody in the office, people kind of pick this work up together, or if you're a business owner, maybe you're not, you don't have the funds or the budget yet to hire somebody in, so you're just doing it on the fly. There's a lot of reasons why you might not have a coherent flow yet in your strategy. And so my hope again today is to give you permission to chill out a bit, not worry so much, and just take some of these baby steps towards identifying a true strategy for yourself. So I'm going to tell you this because I work in marketing and digital marketing over at Mellow Brew Marketing. I've been a business and brand strategist and worked with business owners for nearly 15 years. And so I really love the space, and I love to just educate in a way that is easy and makes, I don't know, people feel comfortable about taking leaps with these tools, because they can be really terrifying if you're not too sure where you're headed with things. So today we are going to talk about a few things. So we're going to learn to define your goals, understand your audience, explore creating content, and how to track your success. So on a more, when I think tracking success, I'm sure you're thinking metrics, and we'll have a future workshop for like really like meaty kind of content and metrics reevaluation. But right now it's just to give you an overall glance of like what is really required with a proper strategy. And I think it will also kind of surprise you that, when there are so many elements and there are so many pieces to this that it is totally okay to feel overwhelmed, and it's okay if you don't do all of these pieces. And I think it just kind of gives you permission to like breathe a little bit, to realize like, okay, well, there's part of this that makes sense for me right now, and other parts I might not be able to look at, but at least I can take some slow steps into that. I'm just reading notes again. There's some things coming in. Hope to work on this now. My role has changed, but I've been reactive, plan multiple non-related tasks happening at the same time. Okay, so that's great. Everyone is just kind of like, these are responsibilities that I have, but I just don't know how to jump in. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So the first thing I want to talk about, and before we jump into the meat and potatoes of crafting a strategy, a lot of the strategy is really just reflective work and thinking about your business as a whole, your clients, your goals. All of this comes together. So we're going to talk about all the different elements right now that a social media manager or strategist might think about before creating content. And so I'm going to walk you through that. And then at the end, I'm going to let you walk away with these exercises that you can work on to identify and just have a better idea of how to put all of this into action. So when we're defining our goals, we need to decide what we want to achieve. That's the first and foremost thing that we're going to want to do when we're trying to develop a strategy. And I know for a lot of people, it's like, well, we need more people coming in here. We need more people spending money with us. We need more people taking action with us. Yes, but there can be a different strategy depending on the season that you're in. So if your season right now is to create brand awareness, then your goals are very different. What you're trying to achieve will be very, very different than if you're trying to drive sales and conversions. So it's important to identify what stage you're at in your marketing and in your business. And there's no right or wrong answer. And if you're saying, listening to this right now and you're like, I have to skip right ahead to sales and conversions, I'm going to tell you right now, you still need these other pieces. You need to bring that brand awareness. You need to build that. You do need to engage your followers. You need to start with lead generation and customer support. All of these pieces are really important in the process of achieving our goals. So right now, I'd like to ask, what are the general goals? If you're looking at this list right now of some ideas, what goals do you have specifically for your strategy and the efforts you're trying to make online? I would love to know what this group is thinking. Again, it helps me kind of guide the discussion and hopefully enlighten you in ways that make sense. So, okay, brand awareness I'm seeing. Brand awareness is really important and should be fundamental all the way through, which is really important. If you've done some of my other workshops too with RTO9, I also want to make sure that you know that there is a workshop I did where I presented you with like the most basic of strategies. It was so simple and so fundamental, like just a way to show up. Today we're diving a little bit deeper into that. And if you've attended both workshops and you're thinking, oh wow, this is a lot more, I encourage you to go back and do the work in that first discussion that we had that was more basic. That's a great starting point still if this all feels like too much today. So I just want to add that. So early stages, attracting new clients, looking to increase engagement, attract more followers. The engagement thing I think everyone is looking for today. And I'm just going to point out that engagement is really difficult today, not because the time that you're posting or like of course these things come into play, but the reality is that today there is so much content being shared in our feeds. There's so much stuff going out there now that you're competing with so much. So that's where the engagement is difficult, and we don't like to hear it, but for the most part it usually has to do with something with our content. Maybe our content isn't just attracting and getting people to stop. So, yes, when I see things like, yes, I want more engagement, there's some work on our part to do somewhere there to get that engagement. And again, it's not always the fun work, it's sometimes the hard work. So, engage and attract audience, lead generation, awareness. I struggle to ensure my social media is an extension of me and my customer relationship. Very, very important. We've talked about this before. Love the idea of having an experience with you in person and being the same thing online. We want to have that translation. So if I'm following you on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, when I walk into a room and I meet you, it feels the same. All very important. So I'm happy that there's an idea here in the group and that we're thinking, okay, these are very clear goals. This is what I want to do. And I promise you that the exercises that I have at the end will help you kind of make a plan a little bit deeper into this. So once you identify what it is you actually want to do, you have to learn your audience. You have to understand who it is you are trying to sell to. And quite often when I ask my clients these questions in strategy, it's a very like basic answer and just like, oh, they give me the general demographics of their person, the sex of the person, the age bracket, maybe where they live, like those basic things. But it can go a lot deeper, and that's what we're going to explore. So we're going to want to identify our persona and what that person's interests are and their behavior is online. All of that is very helpful. We want to identify what platforms these ideal customers are living in. Where are they spending their time? And understanding their pain points. What is difficult for them in their day-to-day? How can you help them win? How can you help them succeed or just get that win from using your product or service? So when we think about your ideal customer, over here in the chat, how many of you feel like you know really who your ideal customer is, what kind of activities they like to do, what do they do on weekends, and who do they spend their time with? Have you done that deep work of trying to figure that out? While you're answering this, I'm going to close my door because I have a very senior golden retriever who's decided to escape and bark in the other room. I'm just going to close the door. Thank you for that. So, still waiting here for a quick note. I know who I would want to be my customer, and that's part of the exercise is understanding who that is. I see someone. I have golden retrievers who bark at the air too. My golden retriever is 14 years old, and he can't hear, and he gets very nervous when I'm not around. So He's gonna have a moment over there, but he'll be okay. The other one will take care of him. So yes, so really identifying your ideal customer, and again, I'm gonna have an exercise for you at the end where it's going to prompt you to really think outside the box of who your client might actually be, and it's going to go a little bit deeper than maybe some of the questions you've had before. And a lot of these things, I'm not a big I'm not really a huge fan of the traditional business plan. I know that there's a place for it. The place for it for me is really when we're trying to do this type of work for strategy. There's a lot of questions. If you've ever done an application and you need a business plan, it's very detailed and outlined and kind of wondering like, what are these questions for? Who is going to look at that? Especially if you're applying for a loan, like who needs all this information? It's definitely the kind of conversation that you want to have when you're identifying your strategy and who your ideal customer is. So while it's something that, you want to skip over, it's absolutely essential. We're a municipality, so looking to engage with people to come to the area, understand our residents, also want information. Yeah, all of this information is important. So again, keep all of this handy and in your mind because you will want to revisit it with the exercise that I'm going to present to you at the end. So, okay, once we've identified who our actual ideal customer is, we know what our goal is, we're moving, things are happening. Now we're going to conduct a competitor analysis. So, what does it look like when our competitors, what are they doing? How does it impact our work? So here are some things that you can analyze when you're looking at people who are offering the same things as you are. So you might want to look at other brands in your industry that are doing really well on social media. You hear this all the time. My clients, almost every one of the new projects that we start, it starts with these people are doing it really great. We want to do it just like them. I don't encourage you to do it just like them, but it is good to know what they're doing and to feed off of the information that you see from their strategy. You might think, wow, their content is really great. We want to do that. But when you look, they don't have much engagement. Maybe there's not, very many people resonating with their content. So is that really the strategy you want to take? Maybe you can do something different and get better engagement and get more clients that way. So all these things are very important. I'm still taking a look here. Will you be sharing this webinar recording? Yes. Yes, the recording is shared and Meg is somewhere here, but these are all held on somewhere so you can go and look at it again. Again, I love that you're all sharing with me here what it is that is ideal for you and what your competitors are. Again, identifying gaps and opportunities. So again, if we're looking at their feed and thinking, wow, this would be really good for me, and then you realize the engagement is low, maybe they're not getting the traction they need. These are gaps and opportunities that you can capitalize on and do better with. So it is important to do this analysis of what's out there. Use that data, put different benchmarks in place. And earlier, everyone was saying it's difficult. There's so much that is required in, managing social media and being online. I get it. There is, and I will be your advocate. If your boss is telling you you need to do all these things and you're sitting here like, this is a lot of work, it is a lot of work. And I'll back you on that. And hopefully you can come back with some pieces here and say, like, there's a lot of pieces that we need to do. And they are, it is teamwork to sit down and have a discussion about these things and really setting benchmark metrics so that everyone can feel like, okay, here are the goals. Here's what we need to achieve this. And we can kind of hold ourselves accountable. And as you bring in people to support in the roles or other team members kind of chime in and support in the efforts of doing everything online, there's like this base of information that everyone is following. That's a key part of a strategy, and it's something that I hope that you take away today. I'm reading another note here. So my clients are not competition. I work for my clients, not my competition. I always say there is enough rat. Yes. For sure. We're there for the client. And I think we all have unique, values that we offer. I think it's easy to get wrapped up in the idea that, there's so many people doing the same thing. But the reality is there is something unique to all of us. What you may, what your industry or your office might say might not resonate with a group of people, but with someone else. And so it's important to stay true and authentic in your voice. All of that is super important. And we talk a lot about that in some of the other sessions as well. So please engage there. So once we've, again, done that competitor analysis, we're going to want to choose which social channel we are going to show up on. And again, in previous workshops, we've talked about like all the tools work. They do to some degree. You can show up just about anywhere, but where should you show up and where you should put your time and energy is an important question. So for you right now, you're probably looking at some key tools. We talk about Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn a lot, but there are all these other tools that are available to us. And should you be there? And really, this comes down to where your client is. So if your demographic is young adults, or maybe very young adults, like early 20s, who are spending their time on TikTok, who really enjoy the content there, who are buying there, you really identify your persona as being a person that's active in that space. You might not like TikTok, but that's probably where you're going to get the biggest, bang for your buck or your time. Earlier, I saw someone talking about working for the township and client or customers and residents wanting information on taxes and different updates going on in the region. Might not need to be on TikTok for that. It's more likely your audience is on Facebook, and that's where that information can be shared. So, really identifying all these pieces and all these steps come into play as we go on and we're building this strategy and we're asking ourselves these questions. So, I'd love to ask right now, where do most of you feel like your ideal clients are? What tools do you think they are? And does that match where you are? Do you think you're in the place where the actual client and your audience is? Or are you just doing the safe thing right now and showing up where you're comfortable? Because that happens a lot too. So Facebook, but I share content across all platforms. So that begs a question. Do you have to do all the platforms? Oftentimes, it's a lot of work to manage multiple platforms. Do you need them? Do you have to be there? Maybe not. If you take all your efforts away from these tools where you're not getting engagement and you put it all into Facebook, what kind of results could you get if you put that time and energy there? So I'm going to look through the list here because there's a lot. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're seeing all the things. Don't love Facebook, but I have to do it. We don't love Facebook, but Facebook is still one of the number one social tools across a lot of audiences. So don't sleep on Facebook. Same thing, Facebook website. Um, Prefer Instagram. See, this is also the language I found myself in that route too. I have key tools that I really enjoy. My audience is necessarily there. Recently launched a new project, and I do enjoy being on Instagram. It's where I've been for the last decade. I have a lot of community people and friends and colleagues that I've connected with over the years, but I think my time would be better spent on LinkedIn. So it is just reforming how you see things and adjusting again based on this exercise and this work that you're doing. It is important to do. And if you're in a place right now where you're just doing the tools because you think you have to, or you read that, everyone has to be on all these things, there's merit and value to all of it. But realistically, I imagine that most of you who are here, you're running your social team on your own or with a very small team with limited resources. And you wouldn't be doing this workshop right now if you had everything at your disposal, because you probably would have a lot of this in place already. Again, lots of comments here, so that's great. And I also love this last comment. Depends on what we're promoting. Facebook, Insta is our primary, but we do also LinkedIn, and that is part of kind of this next point that we're going into, which is actually content strategy and planning. So how everything looks like on different platforms can be different. Your audience on LinkedIn may be different. Like you said, it's more educational offerings there, where it might be more community focused and more entertainment focused on something like Instagram. So yeah, I appreciate that comment. So how do you begin planning content and making sure that you are building your strategy according to all these findings that you do through these exercises? So the first thing, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is to decide on content pillars or themes or core themes that you want to focus on. That doesn't change, and that is something you really fundamentally, it just helps you day to day. When you have these content pillars and day to day, when you're creating content, if you look at these 5 categories or 3 categories that you have, If the content doesn't fit in one of those, it's not content you're going to be sharing. It's a very just like, stop, not going to do this particular thing. We don't need to. It's not aligned with our strategy. It's not aligned with our efforts that we are doing. Content formats. So what suits your goals? How will you do that? Is it educational? Are you going to look at user generated content? We love when people share that they've experienced us. Are you going to leverage that? Video stories or polls? How is it that you can have people engaging in different formats with you? And storytelling elements. So when we want to define a tone, we did that in our last workshop, I believe. I think it was the last one. It was pretty heavily about storytelling, talking about how we, how can we craft compelling stories? It's still very much a fundamental piece of marketing. So absolutely necessary. And again, these content calendars that we should have, I'm sure you've heard it, build a calendar, make a list of all your content, plan it out. I know that as business owners or as, leaders in the marketing departments in your organizations, these are essential pieces that require a lot of time and often are overlooked because there are more pressing matters. But when we talk about strategy, we can't talk about, hey, we need to be really strategic about this, but then also not plan and define what that looks like. So you really just do need to take the time to make these plans. And for a small business to sit down and make some type of a First of all, the exercise that I'm asking you to do at the end here, pretty basic. They shouldn't take you too long. Maybe a good day of sitting down and going through it. And it sounds like a lot of time, but really it can be very valuable and it helps you stay aligned. It helps you with your clear goals. Here's where I'm headed. Anything that doesn't fall in these categories, I can step away from it. It kind of gives you permission to feel like, okay, it's not in this. I can step away from it and not feel like I need to do it. I'm seeing question. Can you give an example of content pillars? Absolutely. So if you are, let's say if we, I'm just going to say a cafe. I saw earlier there was a cafe. So if you had three content pillars for a cafe, you would want to, one, talk about the quality. Let's say the one content pillar is we're going to talk about our quality and the customer experience. So the quality of our coffee and everything at our cafe, really emphasize that it is, it's all made from scratch. We really need to make sure that we're communicating that message and the experience that people are going to have with us because we are owner run and everyone here is very much kind of like an owner to the experience. So coming into our space, we want to make sure that that becomes a theme where we're constantly talking about that. Then maybe we would put in our client's story. So every time a customer comes into the cafe, they're having an experience. We want to encourage them to maybe share their stories on Facebook or Instagram. And one of our core themes would be to share the experience that people have with us. Again, one of our previous workshops, we talked about how to pull the client's story and share that in our content. So I think that would be a really great second core theme for a cafe. And then finally, you might want to add a little bit of maybe that more personal element. So maybe you're sharing information about your team and how they work together. And maybe it's humorous and it's fun and it becomes a little bit of a bit. So again, if we talk about these three things, the quality and customer experience, the client story that they have when they're in your space, and then your team and how they, they're quirky and they're fun. If these are the three pillars that you're just going to go ahead with and you're going to focus on sharing content in that way, it's very easy when you document something, when you're sharing content, you're pulling content. It makes it very easy to say, okay, well, it doesn't really fall into these categories. Maybe I don't have to share it. And when I'm saying this, I also don't want you to be afraid that, does that mean that anything that doesn't fall out of this, like I can't share it? No, that's not the point. The point is to give you some type of permission to not have to keep digging. If you have this foundation, you can start with this foundation and feel good about it. And it kind of takes the guesswork because I'm sure every day you're thinking, well, what am I posting this week? What am I posting this month? What are we going to share? These pieces are absolutely really important. I'm just going to skim through comments because I did see a lot of different things coming in here. Depends where I post. What are your favorite tools to define audience and schedule posts? There are a lot of tools available. I mean, there's so many things now that you can use to schedule posts. We've used a lot of Hootsuite over the years. The tools have become increasingly costly, so it depends on where you're at as far as a business goes. Buffer can be really inexpensive. A lot of the tools to offer, so depending on where you're at for the investment of a tool, if you don't want to spend, $100 a month or more, depending on what you're using, you can schedule directly into Facebook and Instagram. It's a little bit more work to go in the different places, but these are free to use. So Hootsuite, as a general rule, has been our agency tool. But again, there's so many every tool that exists. There are so many details to look at and what works for you, and from a budget perspective, but also the detail perspectives. I encourage you to do some research on there and just invest in something that makes sense for you. Okay, so now that we've done this content strategy and we've started to do some planning, how we're going to share different elements of clients' experience, now we want to engage and we want to build an our community, and we have to think about what that will look like. So how do we engage our community online? And I know that was a comment earlier, learning how to better engage people. So it's not about just broadcasting. We see a lot of people just posting, posting, posting. And it's like, okay, well, how, if you're just posting and you're not asking questions and you're not spending the time to go and talk to your audience and follow their pages and engage with them, it just feels like a one-way street. So you definitely want to offer, that two-way communication and spend some time engaging with your audience. Other ways you can engage your community is by leveraging influencer partnerships. Now, this is a whole other level of engagement, but sometimes there are just local influencers who are really great to work with that you can, have discussions and partner up to collaborate on a giveaway or a special event that's happening. If you're more in an e-commerce space or a larger space and you can invite influencers on the outside, there are people at every budget that you can work with. And just be, I think everyone's always trying to get a deal when they're working with collaborators and influencers, but if you get a really great person who's a content creator who takes their business seriously and really takes the time to create content that's valuable, it is very well worth the investment. I've seen it used in different capacities. I know here in the city of Cornwall, at one time, they hired some influencers in the city of Ottawa to come here and experience the region and document it. And it was really great to see that, they were highlighting things that we in our community might take for granted on a day-to-day basis. And they were really hyping up these experiences in our town. So we don't need to go to the highest level of celebrity to find influencers. We can find people who have really engaged communities, and that can really help with engagement, get a new audience. There's a lot of pros to doing that. Of course, running contests and challenges, that's always engaging. Just make sure that you're following the proper rules and the regulations in your community. And of course, have an engagement strategy. So develop a protocol to respond to comments and messages in time. That is one that it's always surprises me when I find out that, people are asking for engagement to hear more from their customers and they hear from them, but they don't actually engage and reciprocate both ways. So it's really important to have a protocol in place so that if you're handling it, you have these boundaries and a set schedule on how that works. But also, if you're not there, somebody has to step in. There's kind of this list of here's the do's and don'ts of how we engage with our community. All of that is super important, and it is an essential part of building a strategy. So again, more exercises at the end that will help you kind of through all of these pieces. So I'm just going to read a quick note here. Is it quite easy to see the content pillars of your competitors and see what is doing well? I think if someone has a true strategy, you should be able to identify it. I think, unfortunately, I don't think as many people as they should are using strategies very routinely because it does require a lot of diligence. It's why today I'm saying take what you can from this, take the bits that you can that make sense for you, and create a plan and an outline that makes sense for the season that you're in, the time that you have available, the resources that you have available. There is so much that you can do, but one person or a small team, I think it was, well, Gary Vanderchuk did an interview and people were saying he's always posting content. If you don't know about Gary, he just does so much stuff. He's always, his podcast, his online on Instagram, wherever he is, there's just so much content every day coming out. They're like, how do you do it? And it was crazy. Like he has a team of like, I forget the number. It was like an astronomical number of people who are working on his content every single day. So, yes, you might read something that says you should be posting multiple times a day and throughout the week, really go hard. It's all relative to what resources you have. So take what you can today and give yourself permission to build a plan that makes sense for you. I'm limited on time. So I'm going to keep scrolling here so we can talk about setting up tracking and analytics and what that looks like. I know you're probably being asked by your team or who you report to, or even yourself. You want to start looking at metrics and why that's important part of a strategy. You can't change what you don't measure. I'm sure you've heard this before. If you're not looking at things, how can you identify what's working and what's not working? So it's important to make that part of your strategy to sit down and look at what is actually working in the content that you're sharing. You might decide on 5 content pillars and then realize that one of them really doesn't do anything for you. It's not helping you get engagement. People don't seem to be resonating with the content. That's okay. That's where you get to pivot. That's where you get to say, maybe we eliminate this content pillar. Maybe we make some changes to it. Maybe we're not asking the right questions to engage. It's important to go through this and to truly understand where your efforts are being made, because you can do the same thing over and over and over again, but if we're not paying attention and it's not giving you what you want, it's like that insanity thing, right? Like we can't keep doing it's insane to keep doing the same thing if it's not working. We need to make sure that we're making an effort to identify that. So using analytics tools, all of the tools that you use will give you some base of analytics. There's tools you can invest, like Hootsuite we talked about earlier. And finally, create a reporting template. Now, I know when you think of reports, if you're into spreadsheets and Excel and you're thinking there's all this data that needs to be like calculated and filled, you can create a simple sheet for yourself. Create something simple where every month you look over and you say, okay, we started with 100 followers on our page. This, and then you can go in next month and you can report, wow, we're at 108 followers. And I know these numbers are small and you're probably thinking, well, this doesn't sound like great progress, but like any progress is great progress. Think about if you were having an event and 20 people came to your event, you'd be pretty excited to have 20 people in the room. And then next time you hosted it, if 100 people came, you'd still be pretty excited about that. And I think we just kind of forget that, while we can get great big numbers online, we can also really win with just a consistent growth and creating a regular and basic kind of reporting template for yourself and for your team of all the important pieces that make sense for you, because there's lots of analytics. There's a lot of reporting that you can do. Find the key metrics that are important to you. Create a one-page sheet on Canva, or if you want to use a Word or Excel or numbers, wherever you want to be, create something and every month review that so that you can make sure that you're staying on track and you are measuring your success there. And finally, we want to optimize and adapt. So how can you optimize your efforts? How do you make those changes when things aren't working? So you're going to want to review performances regularly. We just talked about that, making sure that you're making changes when it doesn't align. When it comes to A/B testing, that's a great way for you to share different contents in different platforms. So maybe the same key message on LinkedIn looks different on Instagram. Maybe the visuals are different. That's okay. That's probably how it should be. So you can do, if you really want to get deeper into your strategy, you can start doing this testing. And when I think about like optimizing and making changes and doing A/B testing, I want you to really have these foundational pieces that we talked about earlier really locked down before you get yourself too overwhelmed with all of this. Again, my goal is always to give you permission to like breathe and just do things one step at a time. Get to this space when you have the time and the energy and the resources to do it. But these, again, are all parts of strategy, optimizing, figuring out what platforms work really well, what isn't working. Have discussions with your team and with the people that are creating the content for you and really figure out, okay, what is it that we want to continue doing? And we're coming towards the end of the year. There's no better time to have these discussions and really reflect on that. So we're scrolling away on time here. So I'm just gonna quickly overview these exercises that I have you. So the first exercise that I'm going to be leaving with you, and I've kept them pretty basic so that when you take a screenshot, it should be relatively easy if you go back to it after. But I've given you a persona exercise, so really crafting your target audience. I think that no matter what, at the most basic level, this is something that you really should be doing to make sure that you're engaging people as much as possible. So as you go through here, you'll be able to see there are several exercises. I think I have 8 exercises for you. So the basic information we want to know, you can give your person a name to make them relatable and human. What does Johnny look like? What does Sarah look like? This is a fun way to create this persona. What is the age, the gender, the location, their job title? I want you to run through all of these and all this information and make a list of it. When we go into exercise number 2, we're going to go into the demographics and the background, education level, income level, marital status, hobbies and interests. All of this is important. All of this plays a role into creating your ideal person, your persona. What are their goals and their aspirations? Again, break down all of this. I'm scrolling through this quickly because I didn't have the intention of doing this with you today. This is something that I really want you to take and go. And again, you'll be able to take screenshots after, or I talked with Meg about it. We should have probably coordinated, so I could have just given you a worksheet. But ultimately, I just wanted you to walk away with this with some information that you could work through so that you can go and take the steps necessary to kind of firm up a strategy for the new year. So, exercise 4, what challenges and pain points do your customers experience? If you write this down, again, you're starting to better understand who your person is and how you can better serve them. Number 5, we're going to go on into online behavior and social media preferences. What tools are they using? Again, we talked about that earlier in strategy. We're going to find out where they are and how we can create content that's most relevant to them there. We're also going to talk about buying behavior. Where do they like to shop? How do they like to shop? Who and what does the decision-making process look like? What motivates them to make a purchase? All of this is important when you're trying to get people to take action. So really asking yourself the questions that are here. Are they impulsive? Do they do research extensively before buying? Asking yourself these questions and making some type of a diagram and an idea to look at, super important in making that make sense for your strategy. Messaging insights, so the tone, the style. We talked a lot about tone and style and messaging themes and things like this in previous workshops. So if you want to go and check out some of the other things we did a little bit at a more introductory level, there was a lot of information there on how to get started. But again, in this exercise, you're going to want to talk about the messaging and how you're going to want to most effectively keep these themes active for, a most engaged audience. And then a day in the life of your ideal persona. What does their day look like? How can you change their day? How can you add to their day? How can you make their day easier? And I know that there are very, unique groups of people here. Some of you in very different areas of expertise, different sectors of work. But all of these questions apply to anyone. I don't care if you're talking about taxes, coffee, balloons, like you're a florist, you're a gift shop, you're a service provider. All of these things matter. All of these questions help answer, the who your ideal persona is. And you're going to want to take all of this information and just keep a sheet of, okay, this is the person that we are trying to serve. So every time you're trying to create content, you're going back to these exercises, you're going back to this outline that you have, and you're making sure that you're building according to who this person is and how they would react and engage with this. Are you all still with me? It's quiet in the chat right now. I know I've been going on. I would really much prefer if we could chat through these workshops, because then we could answer some more clear questions. Finally, there's a content calendar exercise. I've given you the steps to create a content calendar, so you'll be able to go through how to set your weekly goals, choose your content theme. So you'll be able to choose a theme for that period of time that you're building out your content calendar, identify your platform. So decide which social tools you want to be on, within the calendar. You can mark all of this. Basically, I'm going to give you an actual outline of what it would look like to create a content calendar. You go in, you pick your platform, your theme, your content. You make sure that all of this is very aware. And when you get an overall, glanced look at everything, it's just makes it easier to realize, oh, we didn't talk about this. We forgot about that. We haven't made a place for this educational piece or this entertainment. It's important to make sure that all of that is available and part of your regular messaging in a content calendar month over month. So you're going to want to create one key message, and of course the call to action, and then finally, review and reflect is an essential part of this. And I feel like I wouldn't normally run you through so quickly on these types of exercises. Everything is here so that you can actually go and think. Please go back, take, screenshots of what you need. Meg, I know you're here somewhere. I know you want to have a spot for questions, but I really do believe that if you take the time to work through these two things, really understanding who your persona is, and then creating a content calendar of the content that speaks to them, if that's all you have time for when it comes to strategy, I think you will be far and ahead of anyone else who isn't making an effort to have these conversations. I think it's a great start. So I see a question here. How do you get around not having trolls or getting hacked? I ran a contest and it was hacked, not my account, but the contest. That's interesting. I feel like often the word hacked gets like tossed around, and sometimes it's not actually the case. But when it was actually hacked, was it like a business page that was broken into, a personal page? How did that work? When it comes to trolls, you can't really stop trolls. They just exist. The best thing to do, I think, is always to just answer in a way that when it makes sense. There's an opportunity to answer and just kind of nip that. If people talk about having a negative experience or not liking your product, or just, not being kind to yourself or to your team, I think there's a place to respond in a way that is proactive and just I don't want to use the word polite, but a way that's professional, that this behavior is not accepted here. If it gets really bad and it becomes the kind of harassment, that's a very different level. But oftentimes it's just people who are just, I don't know, just not kind and shouldn't be engaging the way that they do. And I find that often just nipping that in the bud and responding in a way that this won't be tolerated, that often helps and that often works. So your business page was hacked. Um, yeah, they made fake accounts, answered on that. That's tough. Like it's very difficult. I think it's important to just make sure that you have your business pages set up in a way that are safe and secure. They are all linked to personal pages. And the reality is that if anything happens to a business page, it's usually an individual page, someone's individual page that allowed that to happen. So really look at who has access to your pages. And that's probably something that's important to review regularly. Sorry. Hey, Meg.
Hey, I was going to chime in on this one because that's one thing that we previously have done a lot of contests on our social media page. And I will say that we used to get a lot of people impersonating Southeastern Ontario on our stuff. And what we have found to be a more successful way of dealing with the situation, one, it depends on how you're running your contest. We were using a software that people had to submit put their email address, and that's how they'd be contacted, is through email. It didn't stop people from mimicking our accounts. But it meant turning off the comments on any of the posts, because the trolls or the people spoofing your account wouldn't know who actually entered the contest. So there's no way for them to contact them. And always putting a disclaimer on your posts to say that only the winner will be contacted. It's going to be through email. They're not going to have your contest registrants' emails. It's kind of the workaround.
Yeah, it is so unfortunate to cut off engagement, because it's what we're searching for. So to cut off engagement, and that wouldn't be my first go-to, but I understand why it does happen sometimes. And the reality is that there's different types of trolling. There's so many different levels of, like, there's some people who are just there to raise hell and just be negative and I think those people kind of sink themselves. So when we're just kind of pushing back and not allowing that to go further, that usually does the trick. But when it comes to impersonating people and like that's a whole other level. That's a really tough thing to overcome. And the reality is that we don't like to use, invest in tools to do contests and pay for different apps to do things, but these really are the safeguarded way to do a lot of that. That Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, these are free tools that we use. These are just tools that we get to use for free to market ourselves. We choose to participate. If we want to have another level of security or just a little bit of a more gated community, which really goes against everything that social is, but like if that does have to happen, there are tools to make some of these things a little bit easier, but it's tough to navigate, especially not knowing specifically what there's so many unique ways that somebody could be trolling and making things difficult. At the end of the day, probably not worth our time for the most part. And I think as soon as it's hurting individual people, then yes, we need to make it stop. Um, but there's so many elements to review before making an official decision of shutting things down and moving forward. Um,
Absolutely, I was gonna say contesting is always a difficult one, and
yeah, contesting is
there's no easy answer when it comes to contesting on social media.
no. And people are wild with contesting. Like I've never participated in online contesting. I don't think I've ever submitted information to win anything online. It is just such madness. But I have friends and colleagues, they'll tag me every day to something else. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, does this actually work? And like people do win things. It's just never been my thing, and I've never understood going above and beyond to troll that. But I don't know. Some people have a lot of time on their hands, but we don't. We're trying to build social media strategies. We have a
Yeah,
lot of work to do.
some people have too much other stuff going on to take the time to spoof accounts and chase people down for contesting.
Yeah.
I just saw a note from Tracy asking if there will be any notes available. The recording will be available following this session. Karina, I don't know if you have a document for the steps that people might want to work through, but
I did. So I don't have a specific document for these, and that's why I kind of laid them out really basic here. And that's why Meg will be sharing this presentation again. So I think if anything, you can kind of go through these sections. Just like if you actually want to do the workshop, go and press play, get to this part where we do, if we go back to exercise 1, freeze your screen here and just work on this and work through each exercise. Also, don't be afraid to engage. Chat GPT to help you brainstorm this stuff. I know that AI right now is like a hot topic in a conversation of we're scared of it and there's a lot of things looming, but like it's such an effective tool to help you. You can get so great. Talk to this tool like you would another person, and you'd be surprised at how it takes your thoughts and it formulates things in a clearer way, and it makes things just easier to understand. I think it might surprise you. And so, when you're doing all this exercise, it could be like, help me figure out what my ideal persona would what kind of interest they might have. Here's what I'm selling. You ask these questions and like you'd be surprised. It might not always give you the exact answer, but it really helps you kind of with your train of thought and gets things moving and activates this creativity that you might not be experiencing when. And again, I keep going back to like the weight of everything that we have. The reason I talk about these things on a basic level and take what you can out of it and only do what you can is because that's the reality. Unless you have a full department of people who are handling these things, it's a lot of work. And I just want you to take from it what makes sense for you.
perfect. Well, I was going to say, and if people are interested in AI stuff, we did do a presentation at the end of October with Chris Uros from Cornwall, about AI and ChatGPT and how to formulate prompts. So that's also available on the RTO9 website if you want to go check that out. But we are at 11 o'clock today. So I'm going to let everyone go and enjoy the rest of their days. But first, I want to say thank you so much, Karine, for the lovely presentation. Lots of engagement on this one. It was a very popular session. We had a lot of registrants for it. So
That's
really
great.
appreciate you doing this one for us today.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for, I feel like sometimes it feels rambly for me. Like I'm just running through all the things. Like I just always want to jam pack everything. And I probably should learn from that. But I appreciate everyone engaging and don't be too hard on yourself. One step at a time is better than no steps at all. So have fun with it.
Perfect. All right. Thank you everybody so much. Don't forget about the follow-up email and survey. If you have a chance to provide some feedback, that'd be great. And enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll see you at the next one in
Thank you.
January.
Yes, I will be back in January. We're taking a break in December, but in January, I think we're doing analytics and metrics. I think that's what we're talking about.
We
Metrics.
are, yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna
It's the data portion of social media, so make sure you come back for that.
yes, data, but like easy data, not like the kind of stuff that will make you want to scream. I promise.
Perfect. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.